Hey guys, welcome to Pro Gun University. This video is intended for anyone who's thinking about purchasing their first handgun. We'll cover a lot of topics related to that. But before we get started with the video, I want to present you with some basic universal gun safety tips, which apply to any firearm, whether they're handguns, rifles, shotguns, airsoft guns, BB guns, etc. And then we'll continue with the video.
Hey guys, welcome to Pro Gun University. Again, this video is intended for people who have never owned, maybe never even fired a firearm before, and decided that they want to buy a handgun. Um, Hopefully you'll get all the information you need to do that. The first thing I would highly recommend is before even going out and buying a handgun, go take a gun safety class. That'll protect yourself and your family. And then also make sure you learn your state gun laws. What's the process of buying a gun in your state? Can you carry in your state? If you can carry, can you open carry, or is it only concealed carry? Be familiar with the Castle Doctrine laws. Castle Doctrine law means that you're allowed to stand your ground if someone breaks into your home. Some states do not have one. I used to live in the state of New Jersey. In New Jersey, you have the duty to retreat. So I just want to get that out of the way. Okay, so back to the handguns. There's two types of handguns. There are semi-automatic handguns, and you have a revolver, which a lot of people call wheel guns. And I'll explain both of them. Semi-automatic uses a magazine. You load your ammo in the magazine, you insert the magazine, and you rack the slide. Once that's done, there's a bullet in the chamber, and then after that, all you do is pull the trigger every time. And again, if someone is showing you a gun, make sure you use gun safety, have your finger off the trigger, and the first thing you should do is drop the magazine on the semi-automatic, rack the slide a few times to make sure there's nothing in the chamber. That's the revolver. That's the semi-automatic. Then you have the revolver, and the same thing. You keep your finger off the trigger. When someone hands you a revolver, you press the release, you open the cylinder, and you check and make sure that there are no rounds in there. If there are, you press the extractor and you eject them. Now, on semi-automatics, I would highly recommend a semi-automatic with a safety. Like this one, for instance, has a safety. You can't pull the trigger. However, the Glock, on the other hand, does not have a mechanical safety. And basically, Glock's position on that is the safety is don't pull the trigger. Now, the revolver, even though there's typically no safety on a revolver, the only way for a revolver to go off is you have to physically pull the hammer back, pull the trigger, and let the firing pin strike the back of the bullet. As far as safety goes, it's impossible for a revolver to just go off. You can take a loaded revolver and throw it against the wall, it will not fire. Striker-fed guns like this Glock, there's already one in the chamber, and the striker is very close. If you drop this, there is a possibility it'll go off. Some of the other things to consider on a semi-automatic is that the slide for some people is a little difficult to pull back. My wife has a very difficult time pulling the slide back on the Glock, even though she likes it. So my wife carries this Charter Arms Lavender Lady revolver. It's a 38 special, and it's her favorite color. It's lavender. It's lightweight, so she keeps it in her bag, and this works out perfect for her. The other thing is, semi-automatics sometimes do jam. Okay, a revolver, I have never seen a revolver jam. It's basically impossible. And the other thing is, when you're buying a firearm, a lower priced revolver is much more reliable than a lower priced semi-automatic because it's pretty simple and it's really hard to mess up a revolver. Now, what a lot of people ask when it comes to purchasing a firearm, and you never hear someone ask them the question back, okay? So somebody wants to buy a gun that's never had one before, and they say, well, what should I buy? Well, there's no answer to a question like that. There's a few things you need to take into consideration. What is the gun for? Are you going to use it just for target practice? Are you going to use it for home defense, or are you going to carry it for personal defense, or are you going to go hunting with it? What you're going to do with the gun will determine what kind of gun and what caliber. A lot of people will also say, well, what caliber should I get? Well, again, what you're going to do with it determines that. And, don't believe everything you read on the internet. To explain briefly what the caliber is the bullet that'll fire through your barrel, and it's based on the diameter of the barrel. Okay, so briefly, the most common calibers, and there are many more, but the most common calibers are 22 caliber, 380, 9mm, 38 special / 357 Magnum, 40 caliber / 10mm, 45 ACP, and 44 Magnum. Now, one thing you need to ask yourself is, if you're going to use the gun for the range, okay, you're going to want a longer barrel because a longer barrel is more accurate. And it really doesn't matter what caliber you're going to use. Actually, a 22 caliber is probably a very good caliber to have for a range because ammo is very cheap. You could shoot all day. If you're going to use a gun for personal defense, you're probably going to want a shorter barrel, like, subcompact, like 3, probably no more than 4 inches in length. And now this is where the caliber comes in. For personal defense, even though shot placement is very important, a well-placed smaller caliber bullet will do more damage than a poorly placed large caliber bullet. But I personally, if I was carrying a gun for personal defense, wouldn't carry anything smaller than a 9mm. Some people will say, well, go out and get a 357 or a 44 Magnum. Well, you know what? The problem you have with that is over penetration. The last thing you want to do is use a 357 Magnum, and God forbid you have to fire your weapon. You shoot a person, and it goes through them, and it goes through the house next door and kills somebody. Same thing with a 44 Magnum. So that's why I personally would rule out the 357 and 44 Magnum for personal defense. Now for hunting, that's a different story. You'd want a 10mm, you'd want a 357 or a 44 Magnum if you're allowed to hunt with a handgun in your state. Now, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with owning a firearm. So before you go out and buy one, there's a few things you should ask yourself. Number one is, if you had to, do you really think you can shoot someone? Because if the answer is no, you probably shouldn't even be carrying a firearm at all. Also, if you're going to use it for home defense, the same thing applies. If someone breaks into your home, do you actually think that you can pull a gun out and shoot somebody? Now, we're back to these revolver semi-automatic again. Another thing I want to bring up is, again, on the revolver, most of them, if you pull the hammer back like this and you pull the trigger, it's a very soft pull. Or if you just pull the hammer like that, it's very difficult. The semi-automatic, once you rack one, the pistol is ready to fire. I mean, it takes very little pressure. Smith & Wesson EZ series makes a very easy slide for women like my wife that don't have the finger strength, or you may have arthritis and you can't do it properly. So that covers now the type of gun, the semi-automatic versus the revolver. We went through the calibers. According to the FBI statistics, they have the 3 rule, and they show that most gunfights happen within 3 yards, last about 3 seconds, and 3 rounds are fired. So when we go back to ammo, most of the revolvers hold between 5 and 7 rounds. And my wife's holds 5 rounds. This one holds 6 rounds. 7-round revolvers are really bulky. Now, semi-automatics have very high capacity. This Glock 10 millimeter holds 15 rounds of devastating firepower. You know, you never know what's going to happen if you're in a crowd situation. There's multiple shooters. Under a panic situation, to open your revolver and panic and drop them and load them all in, as opposed to semi-automatic. Press the button, magazine goes out, pop a new one in, and you're ready to go in seconds. That's also something to consider. The other thing you want to do as a gun owner is you want to be responsible. You want to have your gun in a secured place. It doesn't need to be an expensive safe. It could just be a filing cabinet with a lock on it to prevent unauthorized people from using your firearm, especially if you have small children. The other thing is the weight of the gun. Okay, this is a 1911. This thing weighs a ton. It's like a boat anchor. It's made out of steel. This Glock doesn't weigh as much. It's made out of polymer. It's like a plastic. And these are all things you need to take into consideration when buying a gun. It's also an expensive hobby because it doesn't end at the guns. Another thing you may want to do is check on your homeowner's insurance. Your homeowner's insurance policy will probably cover guns up to $2,500 as scheduled personal property, but above $2,500, you're probably going to need to purchase a rider. But again, take a gun safety class. Determine what you want the gun for. Okay, don't listen to what somebody says. The best thing I would recommend: go to your local gun shop or gun range and ask if you can try it out. Don't fall in love with the gun like you love the way the gun looks, so you can't wait to buy it and bring it home. That's the worst thing you can do. You really should try it. Try different calibers. I wouldn't recommend a specific caliber. I mean, I carry this 10 millimeter, but I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. It's got a very, very powerful kick to it. Big recoil. It's just not for everyone. There's not one size fits all. Some people love 9 millimeters. I mean, personally, if you had to start somewhere and you went with the semi-automatic route, you can't go wrong with a 9 millimeter. Law enforcement's been using them forever. If you're going to go to revolver route, 38 special is probably the best to get. If you don't mind a little extra bulk, you can get a 357 Magnum, and even if you don't ever shoot 357 Magnum through it, you can also shoot 38 special, so it's like getting 2 guns in one. Now, let's go to pricing and manufacturers, okay? When it comes to semi-automatics, if you're going to be carrying the gun for defense, you want something reliable, okay? You don't need to go out and spend a boatload of money to get a good gun. The lower end guns are like a Taurus, ATI, Rock Island, and I will have these slides at the end of the video. And those are low priced but very good quality. Then in the middle, you have Ruger, you have Glock, you have Sig Sauer, you have Springfield, Remington. Those are all mid-range. And then if you're going to go high-end, you have Kimber, you have Smith & Wesson, you have Colt, and you have Dan Wesson. Now, you go out and you spend $1,200 on a Colt, and if you don't practice and you're not good, it doesn't really matter how much you spent on it. I mean, personally, the only difference is resale value. Obviously, if you go out and you buy a Smith & Wesson or a Colt and you want to trade it in at a later time, you'll get more money for it than you will on a lower end gun. But a lower end gun does not mean inferior quality. At the end of the day, they're all going to do the same thing. So again, I'm not going to recommend a caliber or a brand. I just want you to be aware of what the brands are, what the price ranges are. You know, you can get the lower end Taurus and ATIs for, you know, $350. You go up to the Glocks and the Springfield and the Ruger. You're talking $600 to $800. Then you go to Smith and Wesson, the Colt, Kimber, Dan Wesson. You know, they start at, you know, $800 and can go up to over $1,000. And again, you don't need to spend that much money. So, things to consider: are you going to be using it for plinking? You're just going to shoot it at the range? Get a .22 caliber. Ammo's cheap. You can shoot all day long. If you're going to get a gun for defending your home or carrying it on you for personal defense, you want at least a 9mm. Again, you'll need to decide whether you want a semi-automatic or a revolver. Take a gun safety class before you buy the gun and bring it home. Have a safe. Check your insurance. Once you get the gun, that's when the fun starts, because this is an expensive hobby. I don't know anyone that just owns one gun. There's a lot of things that come after the purchase, which will be in the next video. But I hope there's enough information here to help you make your decision. You can always respond or send me a question on our YouTube channel. I'll be happy to answer all questions. I love answering firearm related questions. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.